LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the March 24th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me for what is a big news weekend with the summary, at least the Attorney General's summary of the Mueller report coming out today. Mueller report being transmitted to the Attorney General on Friday. So I picked out the weekend's 15 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. I'm looking, see, can everybody see me here? Oh, there we go. I just upgraded my software and I'm not getting all the exact feedback I normally get, but I don't know why I had to upgrade my software on such a big news day, but I will have some political comedy. I'll have a very quick Bill Maher reaction to word of the Mueller report coming down on Friday. And of course, I'll be discussing the clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. Although it's an interesting position, all those news programs were before the Attorney General's summary, 4-page summary of the Mueller report. And so they're all kind of speculating, although they all kind of knew that there were no indictments of Don Jr. and Jared Kushner, which meant probably no indictments on collusion, which as it turned out to be. And so we can watch all those clips from the perspective of having read the 4-page Attorney General's summary, and I put a link down in the video description to the Attorney General's summary. And I will be using my legal background as a criminal defense attorney and all my political analysis experience, having watched these Sunday morning shows since the 1980s and been a political junkie, and I will put all of that into my analysis of the Attorney General's summary of the Mueller report that we got today. And I want to make sure that you understand that those principal conclusions summarized by the Attorney General is not the same thing as the Mueller report, but may be the best possible spin on the Mueller report, outside, of course, of Trump's tweet that he was totally exonerated. But I'll discuss more about that after I show a somewhat cheery reaction to the initial news of the Mueller report from Bill Maher on Friday over in this clip.
It's a big news day. I know why you're happy. The Mueller report finally came out. For liberals, this is like Christmas if it was based on real events. But wait, nobody knows what's in the report. Everybody on TV is giving an opinion on this very important report that they have not read. I just saw a graphic on MSNBC, breaking speculation. What we do know for sure is that individual 1 is in deep number 2. But will it matter? Because no matter how damning it is, Trump for the last 2 years has poisoned the well, constantly saying Mueller is the crooked one, right? And it's all been written by angry Democrats, and it's the deep state. That's what I used to do when I knew a bad report card was coming. I'd be like, Mom, keep in mind the teacher is an asshole who has it out for me. Trump has tweeted over 170 times that this is a witch hunt. And yet there's criminal charges against 34 people, 6 Trump associates, Manafort and Cohen and Flynn and Stone and Papadopoulos and Gates. That's a lot of witches. and Trump himself, he's a whiny little witch, you know. But
The Whiny Little Witch Joke, which was the title of Bill Maher's monologue. And if you want to see the source of all the clips I'm taking, including the full Bill Maher monologue, that's down in the video description at a link I put down there. You can also see a link to my clip list of my 15 clips and my cryptic notes, and you can kind of figure out what I'm going to be showing you coming up. I also start off with 3 still frames from the Attorney General's summary of the Mueller report's principal conclusions. And I want to talk about those. I'm going to show you a few still frames, two about collusion and one about obstruction of justice, before I get to the news summaries, because it's kind of like a spoiler, as I talked about before. What Bill Maher was saying, and like breaking speculation is kind of what you're seeing here in the news programs this morning, because it was before the Attorney General's 4-page summary, so they were waiting for that summary to come. But there's actually still a lot of speculation because there's a lot left unsaid. Like I said, this could be the best spin. This could be the best day of the Trump presidency when it comes to the Mueller report, because he got his attorney general, who may end up being the villain, or who knows. That's more of this breaking speculation. But there's a lot left unsaid. First, look at this from the Russian interference part here. Notice it says the special counsel's investigation did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia's in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election. So as the report states, quote, and this is there are like 4 pull quotes from the Mueller report. And one of the things, they never tell us how long the Mueller report is. So how much this 4 pages is summarizing. But here's the pull quote. Quote, you notice it starts with a bracket, capital T, which means they actually cut off part of this sentence. The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. And then there's a footnote 1 there. And if you check out the footnote 1, it talks about the definition of coordinated is an agreement or tacit or express between the Trump campaign and the Russian government on election interference. So that's what coordination is. And so Mueller would had to have found beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump agreed in this conspiracy with the Russians who hacked the emails from the Democratic Party during the election. But there are a lot of things that Mueller could have found that wouldn't quite have risen to that level. And there are a lot of things about the so-called collusion that I want to know the answers to. A few things I wanted to talk about, specifically the Don Jr. Trump Tower meeting with Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and a bunch of Russians on June 9th, 2016. I wasn't sure if that was actual conspiracy with the Russians, but it does violate, it seems like Don Jr. was soliciting something of value from a foreign national, which is a violation of our campaign finance laws. And so I'd like to see both why Mueller decided not to charge that, and why Mueller decided that whole Trump Tower meeting, which seems like evidence of collusion, even if it may not be evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, how that decision was reached. Then, of course, Paul Manafort gave polling data to Konstantin Kilimnik, who was a Russian agent who gave it to this pro-Ukrainian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. Why was that not a possible, or how much evidence from that also was not enough to charge a criminal conspiracy, but might be some type of collusion? And did the fact that Paul Manafort didn't cooperate, did that have something to do with it? And then the third question is the whole Roger Stone thing. Roger Stone knew about emails being released by WikiLeaks, but knowledge is not the same thing as an agreement to conspire, and maybe knowledge and facilitation doesn't rise to the level of a criminal conspiracy with Russia, but it could still be strong evidence of collusion in the more colloquial sense. And so those are things I want to know more about, that what I just showed from the Attorney General summary don't really answer those questions. And then before I get to the news summaries from this morning, the one other screenshot I wanted to show you is the whole obstruction of justice page. And it's probably too small here for you to be able to read. But that is the part that makes me think most that this is spin from the Attorney General. Because if you're, let me see here, is everything still going okay on? Okay, yeah. If you read the part on obstruction of justice, it says that the pull quote says that Robert Mueller neither found that Donald Trump was criminally liable or exonerated him, right? This is over on, this is like the page 3 here. Like I said, that it might be, I don't know if you can read all this, but it says the special counsel states that, quote, this is another one of those pull quotes, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him, unquote. Another pull quote that is only a partial sentence. And then Bill Barr, the Attorney General, he all on his own in just like 24 hours of reading over the report has decided that the president did not commit obstruction of justice, and he says that he didn't take into account the fact that the president can't be indicted in coming to that conclusion, but he never says whether Robert Mueller took that into consideration. And also Robert Mueller says or the summary of what Robert Mueller's conclusion says that that many of the things that Robert Mueller lists as possible obstruction of justice are things that are publicly known. But that also doesn't tell you what things that Robert Mueller lists that aren't publicly known. It means that there's more things that Trump did that possibly obstructed justice that we haven't found out about yet. So those are the spoilers. That's my analysis of the 4-page summary from the Attorney General that leaves a lot of areas for speculation, a lot of unanswered questions. And with that in mind, I now want to show you news summaries from all 5 of the corporate outlets, which kind of, you'll see the speculation is going in the right direction. And most of them talk about what's been accomplished by the Mueller report, or the Mueller investigation. They can't seem to get all their numbers right, but or to match up to. But you'll see it starts off with Chuck Todd talking about the wait is over and now we're waiting, and it seems actually now we're still waiting to learn more about the Mueller report. And it talks about the 675 days, 34 charges, which doesn't match up with some of the other news summaries. And then there are many clips, and it talks about possible obstruction of justice. And this is 4 minutes, 9 seconds that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Sunday morning, well, the wait is over, and now we wait again. Attorney General Bill Barr could send Congress a PDF file of Robert Mueller's principal conclusions, put that in quotes, as early as today. For nearly 2 years, we have been waiting, speculating, and anticipating. Lots of unanswered questions for Mueller to complete his report. And now that he has turned over his conclusions to Bill Barr and recommended no new indictments with that report, we're waiting, speculating, and anticipating, and yes, with still lots of unanswered questions. For instance, how much of the report will Barr release to the public and to Congress? Will Democrats be satisfied with what is made available, or will they go to court to get supporting evidence that Mueller has gathered? Will President Trump claim executive privilege to prevent the release of parts of the report? What does the report say about possible obstruction or collusion? And are those two things intertwined? Since the Department of Justice guidelines holds that a president cannot be indicted while in office, if Mueller has found evidence of criminality, will the public ever know that evidence? Will Mueller testify before Congress himself? And if Barr testifies, how soon will that happen? And ultimately, will supporters or opponents of President Trump be satisfied with whatever is made public?
The long-awaited Mueller report has just been submitted.
Robert Mueller's work is over.
After a 675-day investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election, and after criminally charging 34 people, including 6 former Trump associates, Robert Mueller delivered his report. Now it's up to Attorney General Bill Barr to decide what to do next.
I will commit to providing as much information as I can consistent with the regulations
But Barr has discretion, and Democratic leaders of the House and Senate are already issuing warnings, preparing for a battle over executive privilege.
The president himself has called without qualification for the report to be made public.
And Democrats are making transparency a 2020 issue.
Barr should be called to testify under oath before the United States Congress.
Absolutely. Make that report public as soon as possible.
Ultimately, I believe this will be decided at the ballot box in 2020.
The president and his allies have claimed they want the report released.
Let it come out. Let people see it. That's up to the Attorney General.
Just put it all out there. Yeah. Put it all out there. How about don't redact anything?
Still, for nearly 2 years, the president has been relentless in his opposition to the Mueller probe.
A deputy that didn't get any votes appoints a man that didn't get any votes. He's going to write a report on me.
Will the report say anything about possible obstruction of justice? From Mr. Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey back in May of 2017 to the misleading statement dictated by the president that Donald Trump Jr. provided about the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians connected to the Kremlin.
My son is a wonderful young man. I think from a practical standpoint, most people would have taken that meeting.
The president repeatedly berated then Attorney General Jeff Sessions for recusing himself in the Russia probe.
The Attorney General says I'm going to recuse myself.
Floated the idea of firing Mueller.
I know that he's conflicted, and I know that his best friend is Comey, who's a bad cop.
Called the investigation a witch hunt on Twitter at least 183 times, and suggested, along with his lawyers, pardoning his former aides.
I have not offered any pardons, and I think they asked, or whatever, would you? I said, I'm not taking anything off the table.
Now Democrats, who have delayed questions about impeachment, saying they are waiting for Mueller, will be pressed to decide.
Do you worry that talking impeachment could hurt chances for re-election in 2020?
I didn't believe in it then. I don't believe in it now. It divides the country.
And joining.
So that was the NBC News summary, and I was reading the live comments along the way, and I talked about how this might be the best day for Donald Trump on the Mueller report because of the Attorney General's spin possibly being the best spin to put on the report, other than what you saw from Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Donald Trump, the total exoneration spin, which even the Attorney General didn't say total exoneration, although they took the Mueller report one step further on obstruction of justice, and the Trump's Attorney General personally exonerated him. But I do have to say one thing I didn't make clear, I guess, when I was talking about what happened today, is that because this is possibly the best day for Trump on the Mueller report, or who knows, maybe not, but it's also a bad news day for Democrats who are hoping that the Mueller report would have such strong information in it, or that there would be indictments of Donald Trump Jr. or Jared Kushner in such a way that it would move Republicans over towards considering impeachment and removal of the president, that there'd be such strong evidence there that Republicans would side with Democrats. Some portion of Republicans would, in any case. And so far, that looks like at least the evidence wasn't strong enough to make so-called institutionalist Attorney General Bill Barr side with the Democrats who think that Trump has engaged in a lot of wrongdoing as president, both involving the whole Russia collusion, whole Russian collusion investigation and obstruction of justice, but also wrongdoing regarding a whole bunch of other things, which are under investigation by the Congress and the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of Virginia. But if Democrats were hoping that the Mueller report was going to be the thing that moved people over, that moved independents and some Republicans over to the idea that Trump is a president that deserves to be impeached and removed, or have some sort of sanction for his behaviors, so far they that the chances of that have significantly dropped. The chances of impeachment have significantly dropped. The chances of a removal, which I've always been saying are colossally low, that have even dropped further. I mean, we can speculate about all this bad information that might still be in the Mueller report, that might still come out, but that's speculation, like I said when I did that analysis of what might still be in the Mueller report. But that's almost as bad as the speculation we've had up to this point about what might be in the Mueller report. Now we are speculating about what might still be in the Mueller report. But anyway, I wanted to make that clarification before I move on to the next 4 news summaries. ABC had a shorter but similar news summary to NBC, although you heard NBC say there were 34 charges. You'll see ABC says 37 indictments. I don't know why they can't get the numbers straight, or maybe there's some difference that I don't quite understand, but I saw this number go like 34, 37, I heard 39. It was like I was waiting for someone to clarify. Maybe someone will, but anyway, it's a minor point. The major point is there's been a lot of legal troubles for the Trump administration that doesn't warrant someone saying they're totally exonerated, despite the possible no collusion thing. And I'll talk about that a little more after you watch the 1-minute news summary from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. 22 months, $25 million, 37 indictments, including 6 close associates of President Trump. That's just some of what we know about Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The best news for President Trump, Mueller wrapped up his work without issuing any new indictments. That made for a happy Friday night in Mar-a-Lago. What isn't known yet, how did Mueller reach that decision? What else did he discover about contacts between the Trump team and Russia during the 2016 campaign? Does he believe that President Trump obstructed justice by interfering with the investigation? Some answers may be coming as soon as today. Attorney General William Barr has the entire Mueller report. He's been reviewing it since Friday afternoon, and he's going to decide how much of Mueller's report Congress and all of us get to see. And investigations started by Mueller have been farmed out to at least 4 other U.S. attorneys. So the last shoe has not dropped. The next phase of this battle full of traps and challenges for both President Trump and the Democrats who want to push him out of the White House. We're going to analyze all the fallout this morning. We start with our correspondents on the front lines of this case.
So, like I said, that was a shorter but similar news summary. Charges and indictments don't match up. Now I'm going to show you the CNN State of the Union news summary. I actually watched 3 hours of CNN State of the Union. There were 2 hours. There was like a 5 a.m. version, a 6 a.m. version, and a 9 a.m. version. But the 9 a.m. had a couple repeats. I'll eventually have a Ted Cruz clip. Oh, I never mentioned who the newsmaker. I'm going to have a Ted Cruz clip, an Adam Schiff clip, multiple Adam Schiff clips, multiple Jerry Nadler clips, one Jim Jordan clip. I think those are all the newsmakers. You can check it out on the clip list if you want. But I have 3 more news summaries. The next one is CNN State of the Union. Dana Bash in for Jake Tapper. They couldn't pull Jake Tapper out of work. I heard Rachel Maddow came from some trout stream in Tennessee, and her makeup was so bad, people were saying she was crying, which I don't think is true. And I don't know, do I look like I've been crying? I've not been crying about the Mueller report. We've had kind of a pollen bloom here where I live, so I've been taking this, whatchamacallit, not Claritin, it's the Loratadine. Loratadine is the generic Claritin, and I don't know. If I look like I've been crying over the Mueller report, it's just the pollen bloom. But here's the CNN State of the Union. Our State of the Union is on the edge of our seats waiting for the Mueller report, which we're still kind of waiting for, as I've discussed. But here's CNN talking about it this morning over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in for Jake Tapper here in Washington, where the State of our Union is on the edge of our seats. And minutes ago, a brand new tweet from the president. Good morning. Have a great day. And today may certainly be one of the most significant days in the Trump presidency. We could learn what Special Counsel Robert Mueller's principal conclusions are. Right now, only Attorney General William Barr, Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, and select aides have reviewed the report. And in the coming hours, they could send a summary of the main findings to Congress. We do know the special counsel is not planning to issue any more indictments, according to a senior Justice Department official. The conclusion of the report, which has cast a shadow over the first 2 years of the Trump administration, is already shaping new political battles. The president's allies are signaling he is vindicated as Democrats demand full transparency and vow to press forward with their ongoing investigations into the president, his administration, and his businesses. Let's get straight to the man at the center of things.
So, and that goes to Jerry Nadler. I'll have a couple of clips of Jerry Nadler. But one thing about CNN's State of the Union, it was a short news summary, but it just said that the Mueller investigation had cast a shadow over the Trump administration. It didn't mention the 34 or 37 or 39 charges, indictments, and the multiple Trump administration officials who have either pled guilty or been convicted of crimes. Was it because it was really short? I don't know. It was about the same length as the ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary before it, and they definitely mentioned that. And I'm going to show you in the clip after next that CBS's Face the Nation was able to mention all of that in a less than 1 minute clip. But of course, Fox News Sunday, when they had their news summary, first from Chris Wallace, then going to their reporter Kevin Corke, it's 2.5 minutes long, never mentions any indictment, never mentions any guilty pleas, anything productive coming from the Mueller investigation. In fact, makes it seem like the whole thing might be a bust, which that isn't. Even if you think that there's no collusion and even no obstruction by Trump, all of the Trump administration officials that have ended up with guilty pleas and or convictions, and then of course the pending Roger Stone stuff. And anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after you see the Fox News Sunday news summary that's totally missing that information over here.
News in Washington. After more than 22 months, Special Counsel Robert Mueller has completed his investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. But what did he find, and how much of his final report will we see? We're going to drill down on that. And we have new Fox News polling out today on the 2020 election and what you think of the Mueller investigation. We'll get to politics later, but first, the special counsel's report. In a moment, we'll speak with the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Gerald Nadler, and the top Republican, Doug Collins. But we begin with Kevin Corke at the White House on where things stand right now. Kevin.
Chris, a working weekend here in the nation's capital for the Attorney General Bill Barr and his deputy Rod Rosenstein as the two men pore over the principal conclusions of the Mueller report, with the hopes, obviously, of delivering a summary of that report by day's end. But even before seeing Barr's summation, congressional Democrats are demanding more. A carefree stroll with his wife appeared to be Special Counsel Robert Mueller's reward following a 22-month-long probe into the president, his associates, and the Trump 2016 campaign.
There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. Everybody knows it. It's all a big hoax.
Now it's up to Attorney General Bill Barr to summarize the report's findings. As he spent hours Saturday sifting through the conclusions drawn by the special counsel, he did so knowing there'd be no additional indictments. News hailed by the president's supporters as vindication of the president's longstanding position. Still, congressional Democrats insist the full report be made public, including its underlying evidence, which ultimately could spark a battle between Capitol Hill and the White House over executive privilege, and the Justice Department over precisely what lawmakers have a right to see.
If necessary, we will call Bob Mueller or others before our committee.
This, as the latest Fox News poll found that 52% of those surveyed say they approve of the Mueller investigation. An overwhelming majority, 80%, think the report ought to be made public. That same survey, Chris, found that just 21% of those questioned thought that the report would have any impact on changing their minds about the Mueller probe. 41%, in fact, said it would have no chance of changing their minds at all. Chris?
Kevin Corke reporting from the White House.
So there you see they did show that people wanted the report to be public. It wasn't going to change their mind. There was a lot of reporting there, but they almost made it seem like Mueller found nothing, and that was 2.5 minutes long. Never seemed to find any time to mention all the Trump officials who have been found guilty, either through guilty pleas or in the case of Paul Manafort a trial, and then Roger Stone with his pending trial. None of that showed up in the 2.5-minute Fox News summary, which you can compare with this. This is only 46 seconds long, and yet CBS's Face the Nation found time to give you their own number on how many charges there have been. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch this final news summary before we get to the newsmakers, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Ted Cruz, and Jim Jordan in the rest of the clips after this 46-second news summary from CBS's Face the Nation over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. Special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation has ended, but its conclusions are still a mystery. Not even the White House has been briefed yet. Later today, Attorney General William Barr is expected to release his summary of the report's conclusions and will share it with key members of Congress. That summary will be released to the public, but the detailed report remains confidential at this point. What we do know is that Mueller's 22-month investigation has led to charges against 34 mostly Russian foreign nationals. 6 are former Trump aides or confidants, and so far 5 have been convicted. We begin in Los Angeles with the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff.
And I'll have multiple Adam Schiff clips, including the next clip is going to be Adam Schiff. But you did notice there that in the very brief CBS News summary, they seemed to find the time that Fox News Sunday couldn't find on some of the criminal findings of the Mueller investigation. I saw a lot of pundits over the last day or two make this point that if Mueller had held up all of the indictments and all the guilty pleas and all the convictions to this weekend, and we just all found out about Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort, and we're talking about Trump's national security advisor, his campaign manager, deputy campaign manager Rick Gates, and all the other people you just saw, even just in that CBS News summary. If we had found all that today, it would have been a huge scandal that would be rocking the Trump administration. But because it came out slowly, and it's like, I don't know, are we all like boiling frogs at this point? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. Now I'm going to show you a couple clips of Adam Schiff, not from the CBS Face the Nation interview, although I do have a couple clips from that, including the final news clip will be Adam Schiff talking about exactly how hard he's going to fight to get the whole Mueller report made public, including, most importantly, the declination decisions, the decisions not to prosecute. And so that'll be the final clip number 15, but we are way back on clip number 7 here, if you're following along on your clip list. Where George Stephanopoulos basically is presaging the finding, or at least the summarized finding from the Mueller report, that there's no criminal finding of conspiracy with the Russians to interfere with the 2016 election. And that was something that you could pretty much figure out by the fact that no one else was going to be indicted. No one had been indicted, and there weren't going to be any further indictments. And so there was this Rudy Giuliani tweet that George Stephanopoulos asked Adam Schiff about as to whether he should apologize for saying that there was both circumstantial and direct evidence of collusion, which there is and there was. And just because there's evidence doesn't mean there's enough evidence to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt. Which you'll see Adam Schiff talks about in this clip.
The biggest news from Robert Mueller so far is that there are no new indictments for that underlying any cooperation with the conspiracy with the Russians to interfere in our elections. And we're already seeing Rudy Giuliani come out with a tweet yesterday about that, citing you. He said your previous statement saying there is significant evidence of collusion involving the Trump campaign. I trust he, Adam Schiff, is relieved there is no collusion, and I hope he will apologize for his mistake. We all make them. The real virtue is to admit it. It would help us heal. You gonna apologize?
I think Mr. Giuliani would be wise to wait until the report is made public before making any pronouncements about vindication. And likewise, people should wait to determine just how incriminating it is. We know that the special counsel was not permitted to indict a sitting president, and we ought to see what evidence he produced, both on the issue of conspiracy as well as on the issue of obstruction of justice. So Mr. Giuliani would be wise to do something he has rarely done, and that is wait till we see the facts.
You have said, though, in the past there was significant evidence of collusion. How do you square that with Robert Mueller's decision not to indict anyone?
And there is significant evidence of collusion, and we've set that out time and time again, from the secret meetings in Trump Tower to the conversations between Flynn, the Russian ambassador, to the providing of polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence, and Stone's conversation with WikiLeaks and the GRU through
none of it
Lucifer
prosecuted.
No, that's true. And as I pointed out on your show many times, there's a difference between compelling evidence of collusion and whether the special counsel concludes that he can prove beyond a reasonable doubt the criminal charge of conspiracy. And as I've said before, George, I leave that decision to Bob Mueller, and I have full confidence in him. And I think, frankly, the country owes Bob Mueller a debt of gratitude for conducting the investigation as professionally as he has. So I have trust in his prosecutorial judgment, but that doesn't mean, of course, that there isn't compelling and incriminating evidence that should be shared with the American people.
What you're seeing some of the president's allies already say is that this is
So there you see Adam Schiff saying he's going to trust what Mueller says about whether there was a criminal conspiracy, but he wants to see all the evidence and understand whether there was a lot of evidence but not enough, or maybe there was no evidence, or wants to see more than just the summary that we eventually got from the Attorney General. And there's one other really important point about criminal conspiracy and the difference between that and whether Trump is compromised by Russia. You remember the famous, one of my favorite, I think it may be my favorite clip from the debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is the whole, no puppet, you're the puppet. Well, think about whether if Trump is somehow a puppet of Vladimir Putin, in that he may be an unwitting Russian asset. That's something we talked about several weeks ago, and that was something the FBI was investigating as a counterintelligence investigation, not a criminal investigation. And for example, think of the legendary P tape. Supposedly there's tape of and most of the evidence shows this is not true, and so I'm just using it as a hypothetical. But consider as a hypothetical if there were a P tape that that made Trump look bad because prostitutes had peed on his bed or peed on him or whatever was supposedly on the P tape, and Putin had that tape. So that wouldn't be Trump colluding or in a criminal conspiracy with the Russians to affect the 2016 election if he never did that, but it could still mean that Russians have compromising information on Trump that makes him act in a pro-Putin way, that would explain how he acted in Helsinki, would explain the change in the Republican platform to be softer on Ukrainian sanctions, and Trump not implementing certain sanctions, finding a way for some Russian oligarchs to divest their holdings so that they can now avoid saying. There are all sorts of Trump actions that make him look like he's favoring Russia, and that might not be because of a criminal conspiracy to affect the Russian election. It could be because of compromising material, not the P tape, but there actually is something that Putin knew to be that was compromising on Trump. Trump was lying about the whole Moscow Tower deal during the election, and Putin knew he was lying. So at least to that extent, there is compromising material. And anyway, this next Adam Schiff clip, it's a little under a minute long, and he's talking about the difference between criminal conspiracy and compromising material that I was just discussing, which I'll talk about a little more after we watch together over here.
Your Republican colleagues are saying that by continuing this investigation after Mueller is done, you're moving the goalposts.
The investigation is a criminal investigation. Congress's responsibility is very different, and that is It's our responsibility to tell the American people these are the facts. This is what your president has done. This is what his key campaign and appointees have done. These are the issues that we need to take action on. This is potential compromise. There is evidence, for example, quite in the public realm, that the president sought to make money from the Russians, sought the Kremlin's help to make money during the presidential campaign while denying business ties with the Russians. That is obviously deeply compromising. And if it's this president's view that he still wants to build that tower when he is out of office, that may further compromise his policy towards Putin, towards Russia, and other things. It's our duty to expose that and take corrective action.
Chairman Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, George.
So that, like I said, is a brief description of the difference between Trump being compromised by some Russia-Trump involvement that's actually different from whether Trump was involved in a criminal conspiracy to affect the 2016 election, which is kind of the narrow focus that a lot of Republicans are trying to put their talking points on. And I saw some people in the comment section kind of taking that side. And so for all of you, I do have a couple Republican clips. This is Representative Jim Jordan, 2 minutes and 41 seconds of Jim Jordan kind of responding to what you just saw from Adam Schiff. I just showed you the first 2 minutes and the last 1 minute of Adam Schiff's interview on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. The whole thing is available at a link down in the video description. And Jim Jordan is pretty much responding, giving the Republican point of view of in response to what Adam Schiff said, that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch that 2 minutes and 41 seconds together over here.
You heard Chairman Schiff right there. He says the fact that there are no new indictments is not necessarily vindication for the president. You agree?
Well, we got to read the report, but what I do know is to date, not one bit of evidence to show any type of coordination, collusion, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia to influence the election. And that was the charge, George, when this thing started almost 2 years ago. The Democrats were all saying that the president of the United States worked with a hostile foreign country to steal the election. And again, there's not been one bit of evidence to suggest that any of that happened.
Well, there's been a fair amount of evidence that 14 associates of Trump had over 100 contacts with the Russians, even though you're quite right, there was no charge of conspiracy. Does any of the information that's been revealed about those contacts or about the fact that so many in the Trump world lied about those contacts concern you?
Well, I mean, look, the central charge of the special counsel was to see if there was conspiracy, coordination, or collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia to impact the election. As I've said, that was the focus of the entire special counsel investigation. We've not seen any of that. And again, remember, this is Bob Mueller. This was the guy the Democrats and the Republicans, everyone in town said, this is the guy we need for the job. He is the best person we can pick. He is right next to Jesus. He can almost walk on water. This is the guy, and he will have the definitive statement on that fundamental question. We'll see the report, but all indications are that there's not going to be any finding of any collusion whatsoever.
How about the other concern that one of the other concerns that Chairman Schiff raised right there, the fact that President Trump might be compromised because he was pursuing that Trump Tower in Moscow during the campaign, not telling the truth about it, may still be pursuing it today?
Come on, George. I mean, look, here's what's happened. They don't think this Mueller report's going to be the bombshell they all anticipated it was going to be. So now they're launching all kinds of other charges, all kinds of other investigations. They bring in Michael Cohen a few weeks ago. This was their first big hearing, their first star witness, their first announced witness of the 116th Congress, a guy who's going to prison in 6 weeks for lying to Congress. They bring him in, and what does he do? He lies again. We think at least 7 times under oath in front of the Congress again. So that didn't work for him. Now what's Chairman Nadler do? 81 different letters to 60-some different individuals, starting a whole new fishing expedition. This is how they operate. So if it's not the bombshell they wanted, they bring in Cohen. That doesn't work. That hearing is a flop. Then they go with Chairman Nadler and 81 different letters sent out there. This is how the Democrats are going to operate. We just got to be used to it and understand that that's where they're going to go.
Do you stand by your vote that the country should see?
And the next question there was Jim Jordan standing by his vote to say the Mueller report should be public. And I've been doing some speculating. I've been trying to read between the lines of William Barr's 4-page summary. And the thing I've been saying that it's spin, and I've been saying that it's the best spin other than the total exoneration spin that you could put on this unknown quantity, which is all the information in the Mueller report. And one reason that I say that is, why is it that William Barr, the Attorney General, decided, along with Rod Rosenstein, who did not sign his letter but supposedly concurred in his decision, to say that there wasn't enough evidence for obstruction of justice, when Robert Mueller apparently, even according to the summary, decided not to come to a decision on that point? Why did he decide to do that, even though he's like, he was chosen for his job, it seemed, because he wrote this 19-page memo with a really narrow interpretation of what is obstruction of justice, and saying that a president can't really commit obstruction of justice when he's exercising his Article 2 powers. And that is pretty bogus for reasons I've talked about in the past. And I mean, for example, you have the power to give someone $1,000, but just because you have the power to give someone $1,000, if you do it with a corrupt purpose, like, say, to get them to, if they're a prosecutor and you're doing it to make them not charge your friend with a crime, even though you have the power to give that person $1,000, that doesn't mean doing it with a corrupt purpose is an obstruction of justice. And that's a bogus theory that William Barr propagated, in this theory that if the president has the power to do it, it can't be obstruction of justice. So I'm not surprised he came to the conclusion no obstruction of justice, and that's something I really want to see. But before I get to all that, I'm going off on a tangent here. I do now have another Adam Schiff clip, and in this clip, Margaret Brennan, I think, doesn't really understand the difference between evidence of a crime and being guilty of a crime. You heard Adam Schiff talk about the evidence of collusion, but that might not rise to the level of a crime, but it might also be important in other ways for the Congress to look as to whether Trump is compromised, and that remains to be seen. But here he talks about how, all the circumstantial evidence. I talked about the difference between circumstantial and direct evidence. I don't want to go into all that again. But just because there's evidence doesn't mean there's evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that a prosecutor can use to charge someone with a crime. I used to be a criminal defense attorney, and I used to tear apart evidence all the time and show that there wasn't enough evidence to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So that doesn't mean there was no evidence. And Margaret Brennan seems to think that Adam Schiff in the past has said that when he says there's evidence Trump committed a crime, that means Trump is guilty of a crime, which is not the same thing. And even the clip she uses to try to, set him up in a gotcha moment, I think what Adam Schiff said in the past is still true now, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that 2.5 minute or so clip from Face the Nation this morning over here.
No member of the Trump campaign was indicted for conspiring with Russia. I want to play for you what you had predicted.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight. Now, that's a different statement than saying that there's proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a criminal conspiracy. Bob Mueller will have to determine that. On the issue of collusion, the reality is that there is ample evidence of collusion in plain sight, and it has been for a very long time.
Mueller does not think there is a criminal conspiracy on this front. Does it hurt your case?
No, as I said, I have great confidence in Bob Mueller's judgment as to who should be prosecuted or who should not. We're going to have to wait to see the report, and that report needs to be made public ASAP, so we can evaluate the body of evidence on the issue of conspiracy and look at why Bob Mueller decided not to indict. Now, vis-a-vis the president, Bob Mueller can't indict the president. So the fact there are no future indictments either on conspiracy or obstruction of justice doesn't tell us about the quantum of evidence. So I think we need to wait to see the report, but I also think the AG needs to make that report publicly available. The special counsel spent 2 years almost investigating this. The public has a right to know, indeed a need to know, so that we don't have to ask questions about what the evidence was on either of these core subjects of his investigation.
But as we heard you say there, even before the report was turned in, you did think that the president had committed a crime, and specifically that issue of conspiracy. So is there anything that the Attorney General can say that would dissuade you from that?
I never said that I thought the president had committed the crime of conspiracy. I did say that there is ample evidence, and indeed there is, of collusion of people in the Trump campaign with the Russians. And that evidence, of course, includes secret meetings at Trump Tower with Russian delegations with the promise of dirt on Hillary Clinton, the provision of polling data to someone linked to Russian intelligence by Trump's own campaign chair. I could go on and on and on. But again, the issue of indictment, of prosecution, that is Bob Mueller's decision, and I have great confidence in him. I think we all owe him a debt of gratitude for conducting this investigation in such a professional manner. And I'm going to reserve judgment on that, those prosecutorial decisions until we see the evidence, but I have great confidence in how he's conducted himself.
So, what do you think? Am I right that Margaret Brennan misconstrued Adam Schiff's previous comments to say that he thought that Trump had committed a crime, which is different from saying there's evidence Trump may have committed a crime? So, some quantum of evidence that may not rise to the level of proof beyond a reasonable doubt of a crime. I may have upset Sandy. You hear Sandy shaking there. But by the way, I will have a bonus Dash and Sandy clip at the end. But now I want to move on to a clip of Jerry Nadler, the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, which he's the guy who's in charge of starting impeachment hearings in the House. He's the House Democrat in charge of impeachment. And he seems to have moved off what he said like 3 weeks back. And I'm going to show you a 30-second clip of him saying that Trump obstructed justice 3 weeks ago. But he doesn't really go that far, talking to Chuck Todd on NBC's Meet the Press this morning. And I'll contrast that with the clip from 3 weeks ago after we watched this clip together over here.
A few other things which are very relevant here. We know that the president pressured the FBI director to go easy, to drop the investigation on Mike Flynn and some others. We know that he fired the FBI director for not giving him the personal loyalty that he demanded, and for not dropping those investigations. We know that many of the president's closest associates, his national security advisor, campaign manager, etc., have been convicted of various crimes, and we know that he's waged a relentless 2-year campaign to attack law enforcement institutions, the FBI, the special prosecutor, all to demean the power.
So don't you have enough evidence
of those people to people to hold them accountable?
Do you already have enough evidence? Do you need to see the Mueller report at this? You have the indictments that Mueller has issued. You have the narratives in those indictments. So you have pieces. You know exactly a lot, probably, of what's going to be in this report. Sounds like you already believe there's enough evidence out there to prove obstruction, for instance.
I think we have to see all the evidence, and there might be evidence that goes the other way. There might be evidence that tends to be exonerating. We need to see all the evidence, and we shouldn't have to waste our time and the public's time and money recreating the same information by interviewing all the same witnesses. There's no need for that duplication at all.
What do you make of? How did you interpret?
So Jerry Nadler there seemed really unwilling to say that Trump obstructed justice, even though here is 30 seconds of his interview with George Stephanopoulos from 3 weeks ago that I already showed you that clip 3 weeks ago, but just to refresh your memory, he didn't seem so reticent then about whether Trump committed obstruction of justice over here.
Do you think the president obstructed justice?
Yes, I do.
It's
very clear that the president obstructed justice. It's very clear. 1,100 times he referred to the Mueller investigation as a witch hunt. He tried to, he tried to protect Flynn from being investigated by the FBI. He fired Comey in order to stop the Russian thing, as he told NBC News. He's dangled he's threatened. He's intimidated witnesses in public.
So am I right? Was Jerry Nadler a lot stronger on Trump being guilty of obstruction of justice 3 weeks ago? Now, if you watch that whole clip 3 weeks ago, he also said that he didn't think that Trump should be impeached necessarily, that in order for that to happen, you had to build a bipartisan consensus, hold hearings and let the information come out. And then if there actually is some bipartisanship so that it's worth doing, then you go forward. Even though the evidence is there, it has to be so strong that it brings people along. It seems like some sort of impeachment slogan. If you want impeachment, it has to be so strong it brings people along. And by people, I mean, those independents and some Republicans that make it a bipartisan effort or a nonpartisan effort, since there are independents involved. But I also want to show you one more Republican clip, and then I'll have one more Jerry Nadler, one more Adam Schiff talking about one more Jerry Nadler talking about collusion, and one more Adam Schiff talking about what he's going to do to make sure the full Mueller report comes out, including all the underlying material. But first, here's Ted Cruz sort of saying the opposite of what I just said and the opposite of what you've heard from Nancy Pelosi, where they're saying that they don't want to impeach. And I want to make a short commentary about this, that I've been saying I want to hang around doing my live stream to cover the impeachment, and then at the beginning of this live stream I said that I thought the chances of impeachment have actually dropped. And I think personally I would like to see an asterisk next to Trump's name in the list of presidents that there have only been two other presidents impeached, Clinton and Andrew Johnson, and then Nixon was almost impeached. He left to avoid being impeached. No one's ever been removed, but there's something about Clinton, especially in the Me Too era. I think there's something about the Clinton impeachment that says there was something kind of fishy about his presidency, even though, and then Andrew Johnson, he definitely had his problems that, he wasn't removed, but he definitely deserved impeachment. So personally, I'd like to have that asterisk, and I think not because it's not political, because I think that Nancy Pelosi might have it right, that it is most politically advantageous to Democrats in 2020 not to impeach Trump, to put all the energy in their base towards getting Trump out of office the old-fashioned way with votes. And that would be a stronger Democratic wave, and the impeachment thing might have some backlash, and it might energize Republicans, and so wanting to impeach the president actually is something about having integrity about the Constitution and the meaning of the presidency, and what is unacceptable behavior from a U.S. president. It's not really a political thing. And then here's Ted Cruz in the final Republican clip actually predicting that the Democrats, whatever they're saying, they do want to impeach, and ridiculing some of the things you already heard from Jerry Nadler about going beyond criminality and broadening the investigation over here.
But Dad, my point is, you asked Congressman Nadler whether the House is going to impeach the president. I'll answer that for you. Yes, they fully intend to impeach the president, and they don't care about the basis. Twice Congressman Nadler said something remarkable. He said, listen, the special counsel's focused on crimes. We're not all that concerned with crimes. Our focus, this is Democrats in the House, is much broader than crimes. What they're basically saying is they're going to impeach the president for being Donald Trump. And they don't care about the evidence. They don't care about the substance.
But you know much better than I that the
presidential
Justice Department
candidate ought to be asked now.
A president. It's against their guidelines. So is that a bit of a red herring?
Well, we'll see what's in the report. And as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I'm going to read the report. I want to give it a fair consideration. And I hope and expect the American people to have the chance to do the same thing. But my point is the extreme left in the Democratic Party, they have so much anger and hatred directed at the president that we're going to see the Democrats moving forward with impeachment, whatever the evidence. That's why you're seeing Democrats like Congressman Nadler saying, don't worry about crimes. Our focus is not crimes. That's just Bob Mueller's focus. Our focus is broader. What their focus is politics. And they need to set aside the rage and anger. Listen, I disagreed with Barack Obama on a host of issues, but I didn't believe he should be impeached. The extremism that we're seeing in the Democratic Party, their focus is obsessively on trying to destroy the president of this administration. That's not good for the American people. We ought to be coming together and solving the real problems in this country, not just engaged in relentless political warfare.
Okay, Senator, I want to turn to a couple of other...
Hear Senator Ted Cruz talk about not engaging in relentless political warfare when I remember him doing a standing filibuster in the Senate reading green eggs and ham because he wanted to stop Obamacare. I don't know, that seemed like relentless political warfare to me, but you can let me know what you think down in the comments section. And you can let me know what you think about whether Ted Cruz is correctly characterizing what Jerry Nadler said about broadening the investigation. And I'm going to give Jerry Nadler one more chance to answer, not directly to Ted Cruz there, but a Ted Cruz stand-in, Fox News Sunday, Chris Wallace, asking about those same questions about whether no indictments mean there's no criminal collusion. And you'll hear Jerry Nadler both talk about the collusion in plain sight, some of the issues I talked about at the beginning that we still need answers, the Trump Tower meeting, the Paul Manafort poll data I think is in there. I don't know if he mentions Roger Stone. And then he also talks about the difference between counterintelligence and criminal conspiracy at the end of the little over 2-minute clip from Fox News Sunday this morning over here.
Do a little tea leaf reading on the little bit we know now. The Justice Department says that the special counsel is not recommending any new indictments. That means that no one will have been or has been or will have been charged with collusion with the Russians, and President Trump clearly couldn't do that himself. So in effect, isn't it a logical assumption that the special counsel did not find any criminal collusion with the Kremlin?
Well, all we know is that the special counsel, all we think we know is that the special counsel is not bringing criminal indictments for collusion. There are other investigations going on in which he's farmed out to the Southern District of New York, the Eastern District of Virginia, and they may or may not. We do know, remember, in plain sight of a lot of collusion. We know, for example, that the president's son and his campaign manager were present in a meeting with the Russians to receive information which they were told in the invitation was part of the Russian government's attempt to help them in the election. We know that the campaign manager gave targeting data, political targeting data to an agent of the Russian government. So we know a lot of things, and maybe it's not indictable, but we know there was collusion. The question is to what degree and for what purpose. The other thing is, remember, the Justice Department...
Excuse me, sir, that's the point I was going to make. Jared Kushner was not charged for that. Paul Manafort wasn't charged. John Jr. wasn't charged. So it would seem that there was no criminal collusion among them, so it would seem to clear the president, wouldn't it, on that issue?
No, it would not. The Washington Post has a story today which says that in counterintelligence investigations, because of the way they are done and because of the way counterintelligence works, very often they do not lead to criminal prosecutions. But these are additional reasons we have to see the report. The entire country, the public needs to see the entire report so we can see what the special prosecutor says about these questions. Right now, it's very speculative.
Okay. You've made it very clear that...
I don't know, is that a biased interpretation? One bias, did it seem like one of Jerry Nadler's eyebrows was like a lot higher than the other there? That seems like, is that a bias? Well, I don't know. That seems like a superficial take on I kind of explained what he was going to say there and the difference between collusion and counterintelligence investigation and criminal conspiracy, and that there are just a lot of unanswered questions from the Mueller report, and that's why hopefully we'll get to see a lot more information than this 4-page summary from Trump's Attorney General. And on that issue, the final news clip I want to show you. Oh, and you also heard that Jerry Nadler mentioned the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of Virginia, and I wanted to show my Super Chat contributors so far here. You can contribute to my channel a lot of different ways, including there are links down in the video description to become a monthly patron on Patreon, and to give direct contributions through PayPal if you want to support the ongoing media criticism and political commentary every week. And I wanted to answer Lulu Girl's Super Chat contribution question there about the Southern District of New York and the finances. That's something that's also not in the Mueller report. All the stuff that got farmed out, all the stuff that isn't directly about Russia collusion. One thing people forget is that the Southern District of New York, both a judge in the Southern District of New York and the prosecutors there, have accepted a plea from Michael Cohen in which he said he was directed to commit 2 felonies by Donald Trump. And if you look in my video description at the federal statute on principles, if you direct someone to commit a felony, it's like you committed it yourself. So at least on the Stormy Daniels payoffs, and Donald Trump Jr. also signed one of those checks, so there could be all sorts of stuff going on in the Southern District of New York, and that doesn't even cover all sorts of other possible financial shenanigans that might be under investigation there, maybe awaiting Trump when he leaves office. And so there's at least one court that believes that Trump has committed a felony, a campaign finance felony, that sort of came out of this investigation and the whole Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels thing, but wasn't really part of the Mueller investigation. So thank you, Lulu Girl, for that question, and also Nelson 100, thank you for your contribution without a question or comment. I appreciate all the support. And now I'm going to get to my last clip. This is actually Adam Schiff talking about why he thinks that he's going to get all the Mueller report released, and the arguments he's going to use, and why the Republicans' arguments are going to fail. And hopefully this is true, but this is the final news clip before my bonus Dash and Sandy clip in the end of the show. And I'll talk about this clip a little more after we watch together over here.
That, declination decisions are typically kept confidential, and that there's a lot of information in here that will be protected, essentially. It was gained through grand jury subpoenas. It's not things that can necessarily just be blanketed out there as a press release. So is this a beginning of a negotiation, essentially, in terms of what you're asking to be made public?
That's a very important question, and I think what the public needs to understand is the rule against providing information as to people not indicted gives way when there is a paramount interest in transparency. And over the last 2 years, the Justice Department under Rod Rosenstein made the decision that the interest in transparency, and because Congress insisted, meant that the Justice Department should provide over 880,000 pages of discovery in an investigation in which no one was indicted. Information about Hillary Clinton and Bruce Orr and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and others, Andy McCabe, that all was provided notwithstanding there were no indictments in that investigation.
That wasn't a special counsel, and that wasn't a counterintelligence investigation, though. It was a different case.
Well, actually, a great many of those documents, thousands of pages of those documents, pertained to the Mueller investigation, were part of a counterintelligence investigation. There were FISA application materials that were declassified and made public. There were interviews that went into those applications and other materials that were pertaining to an ongoing investigation that had deep counterintelligence implications. So they did all of that, and they cannot maintain now that we only do that for Republican Congresses vis-a-vis Democratic candidates. We won't share information. We won't be transparent about the Trump investigation. That will never fly with Congress, and it will never fly in the court if we have to go to court to insist on that evidence.
It took Bob Mueller 2 years to come to these.
So Adam Schiff seems very confident there that he will prevail in court if necessary on getting the Mueller report he will prevail in court on getting the Mueller report released, based on the way the Justice Department treated all those, the Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, the whole investigation into the investigation where they actually gave out FISA application warrant information. That's the one thing I was thinking about. Remember the whole Nunes memo about the FISA warrant application? I wonder if this William Barr 4-page summary of the Mueller report is going to end up being that kind of spin. Maybe not. Maybe, the thing that's really going to let us know is if Adam Schiff is correct in his confidence, and we're really going to get to see the whole Mueller report eventually. And that's when some of the speculation that some people were criticizing in the comments and some people were hoping I was correct on. But like I said, it is speculation, and it looks like there was a lot of speculation in the media and in pundits or in news from members of Congress about additional indictments that did not come to pass. So we should definitely be skeptical about speculation at this point. But that's all we have about most of the contents of the Mueller report based on this 4-page summary from William Barr, who I don't have a lot of confidence in, but you can... and if you've been watching, I haven't had a lot of time to watch how other people are interpreting what the William Barr 4-page summary, but I think he's going to end up being kind of the villain of this weekend's news, at least from the more partisan Democratic side, because I am very skeptical of that 4-page summary, although it definitely remains to be seen as to what's in the rest of the Mueller report. But I think that may be the best spin. William Barr's spin may be the best, other than the total exoneration, as I've said over and over again. And as I mentioned before, I don't want to end the show without showing a bonus Dash and Sandy clip, and maybe this is hope for bipartisanship in the future. Maybe it just shows what a sweet puppy Sandy is, because you'll see that even when Sandy is eating, and this is from early this morning, when I refilled Sandy's water and food dish, and you'll see Dash will come in and sneak drink from Sandy's water even while Sandy's eating, chomping away. That's what you're going to see. I forgot to import. Let's see. Here's the clip. This is 30 seconds of Dash drinking Sandy's water while Sandy is eating in the food bowl right next to it over here. So that's from early this morning when I was watching Meet the Press. I paused it and ran out to get that clip for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the other clips I picked out, my analysis of the Trump Attorney General 4-page summary of the Mueller report that we have yet to see the real contents of, and how that's going to pan out. I guess we'll at least be able to cover that in the upcoming weeks of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. I believe next week we'll have both Bill Maher and Saturday Night Live. Maybe Alec Baldwin will come back. Maybe there'll be more developments, more leaks, more information about what's in this Mueller report. Until next week, and until I have time to upload some other edited, produced video. I'm still working on turning the Supreme Court up to 11. There have been a lot of developments on that, so I hope you'll keep watching my channel, and you'll return next Sunday for my live clip roundup. And until then, I guess I'll be seeing all of you around the internet.